Is this thing on? Is it live? I think it's live. Having some technical difficulties this evening. Anyway, what's happening, everybody? Everybody's having a fantastic, whatever day it is that you're watching this. Hopefully this is coming through. God, the lighting in here is atrocious. That in my head is super glossy. Look at that. Anyway, touching base with you guys, I have been doing some work on Little Miss Revlon, aka Chandelier. Main idea behind this was trying to get, well, initially trying to fix a bump or a clunk that was in the suspension, which led me to end up putting a different sway bar in the front of the car and, just having a lot of fun playing with that. So, if you guys have questions on that, I was able to fix that clunk that was in the suspension. So we can talk about that. We can talk about how the car feels like to drive now. I'll probably be talking quite a bit about that. This is basically an open chat. So if you've got questions, shoot them out there. I'll see if I can answer them. It could be basically about anything, not really just sticking to suspension or anything like that. But I know I have had a lot of guys interested in this. So like I said, be more than happy to walk you through at least the stuff that I was looking at. Aside from that, doing some oil research, is trying to basically brush up on what manufacturers are up to these days. The big three, in fact, I've got them on my dry erase board over here, Castrol, Mobil 1, and Pennzoil. Looking at what those specs are, as well as some off-brand specifications. So we can talk about stuff like that too if y'all want to. But let me check in with you guys real quick. Eric Taylor is first in, got the flex. Rip is saying, hey, B, what's up, Rip? Sean is in. Say, what's up, Professor? What's up, Sean? Jay's in. Say, what do you think about turbo with Hellcat supercharger in a 5.7 compound system? I say go for it. Give it a shot. I don't like compound systems too much, though. One of the things about them is that they're kind of the worst of both worlds. With that being that you've got a lot of heat in the air charge, regardless on how you set them up. Plus, with the positive displacement supercharger, they're not that complicated to put together because it's just a throttle body on the end of a supercharger. But again, it's a lot of weight, gets a bit convoluted, and you can make more power with just a good turbo setup than you can with a compound. Believe it or not, the supercharger ends up being the restriction. And, just pick one and really roll with it, honestly. Again, I know guys have done well with combo systems. It's just a lot of complexity for what I would consider to be not a lot of gain, especially if you're trying to build pretty significant power. But heat is going to be the thing that kicks your butt on that. Tad, thank you very much. Saying, any clue when Dodge is coming out with stage kits for 6.4s? No. So let's talk about that. Tad brings up a pretty cool topic. And it's something that I didn't really want to get into because, unfortunately, the people aren't here to defend themselves. And this will probably be somewhat negated as of next week when I actually talk to these folks a little bit more in depth. But Tad's asking about the stage kits for the 6.4s. I would love to give you that information, Tad. As a matter of fact, I tried to get you that information on Thursday of this week. But the problem that I ran into is that my local power broker just was not that interested in talking to me. As a matter of fact, the person behind the parts counter was about as clueless as you could possibly get, and consider yourself an employee of a Dodge dealership that was a power broker. I asked this employee about, why isn't there any livery around here? You guys are power brokers. Why isn't there something to designate you guys as a power broker? Why isn't there something going on here in the parts waiting room? Mopar, power broker, direct connection. Guys, nothing. Crickets. Absolutely nothing to report. And the attitude was, oh, let me go get the manager. And then, the Muppet runs off to go get this manager that was conveniently in a meeting. I thought that was pretty cute. So you mean to tell me you're in a meeting? Fine. I have a lot of meetings myself, but the reality is when you've got somebody asking about direct connection, that's not your normal run-of-the-mill customer coming in to get, I don't know, a part for their Dakota. Okay. This is somebody that's a high margin profit center, basically walking in to talk to you. Anyway, long story short, they didn't seem to have a clue about what direct connection was, meant, couldn't tell me anything about inventory, really couldn't tell me anything whatsoever. So maybe I shouldn't be surprised. Maybe I should have been surprised if they would actually have talked to me, or if they would have actually had somebody back there that would have been enthusiastic. They had a guy. And the problem is the guy was in a meeting, conference call. So I don't know, Tad, your guess is better than mine, but I'm going to try to get a little bit closer to the bottom of this next week, because I am going to show up. I am going to talk to the guy and find out what the latest is. And also, why is it that his staff doesn't seem to be too goddamn interested in this direct connection program? And why is it that they seemed a little bit dismissive instead of excited about this? Lack of training, lack of knowledge, lack of the historical significance of this. I don't know. Didn't really get me where I wanted to be when it comes to that. Now, again, these people aren't here to defend themselves. And to that point, the conversation really hasn't taken place yet. But the initial taste, all right, the appetizer, if you will, is not really up to snuff. And I would have come away a whole lot more energetic, a whole lot more, I don't know, the energy would have been a whole lot more positive with me walking out of that place had the energy been positive when I walked in the place to begin with, especially when I started talking about direct connection. And it's, it's like, I don't know. Like they couldn't be bothered by talking to me. Isn't that cute? So anyway, I will be initiating that conversation next week. I hope that it goes better. And I hope that I have something to talk about, because I will bring this to the live show. And if it goes well, I will be more than happy to prop these folks up. If it goes poorly, or I feel like there is a lack of enthusiasm, a lack of drive on Dodge's part, I'll bring that to you just as well. Because I mean, I can't say that I'm optimistic, but I can only be realistic about what I'm going to see when I have that conversation. So anyway, good question. Tad brought up. Thank you very much for that super chat, buddy. And we shall see. Hopefully I have some answers for you guys next week. But again, that was Thursday of last week. And when I walked away from that dealership thinking that I will never go to that dealership for parts. Let me make this perfectly clear. I walked away from that dealership and that experience thinking to myself, I will never bring anything to that dealership for parts, warranty repairs, or anything under the sun if I have a new car. I won't buy a car from that dealership because of the attitude from that parts department, especially somebody that's asking about performance and the program that they're promoting. So that's the attitude that I walked away with after I was basically kind of given what felt like a bit of a cold shoulder. Now, again, these people are not here to defend themselves, and maybe somebody was just having a bad day. Chalk it up. But I'll let that slide once, and I won't let it slide again. So anyway, let's get back to it. Where was I? Let's see. Michael Corleone is in. What's up, Michael? Sovereign Knight is in, saying, sup, y'all. Sup to everybody. Ripped is in. Ripp's saying, sent. What does that say? I don't have my glasses over here. Hang on. Oh, put some half shafts back there, and it's clunking noise, which I think is coming from the drive shaft. They forgot to put some bolts. Now you'd have a pretty serious vibration if that would have been the case. I just make sure everything is tight back there. Oh, by the way, when it comes to sway bars, and looking at the rear sway bar, there ain't no just replacing it. I don't know how you would fish it out of there unless you drop the crate a little bit. Somebody may know how to do that. Somebody has done that and is thinking that I'm just silly for saying I wouldn't even attempt it. But maybe I'm right, maybe I'm not. But I was looking at that thinking, ugh. But I had planned on leaving the stiffer sway bar in the rear anyway, so it works out pretty good for me. Let's see. Riff's hanging out with Sovereign. Chuck's asking, is it necessary to be able to adjust camber on my Challenger? My alignment tech at the tire center said they are locked in from the factory. You can still adjust them. There is some adjustment. They're aggressive with camber. Casters rock back pretty far for stability, but it's still adjustable. I think you can kick it out. You can kick it out actually to 0. But no, I mean, I'd leave it at the -1.5 or 2 that they come with. Sovereign saying, man, they need diehard Mopar people working in the dealerships. Bro, let me tell you something. So the person that I was dealing with could not have been more disinterested. But the second thing that bothered me the most was looking around. Like, you see this fender cover behind me. Nothing like that. There was nothing even mentioning direct connection. I saw a lot of Jeep hats. I saw some Ram truck hats, but I didn't see anything that was promoting direct connection. And these people are supposed to be power brokers. I can tell you this, there's a dealership by me that should have been a power broker and are pissed off that they're not power brokers. This is a dealership that's got a Hemi Challenger in their showroom. I can tell you that they would be parading the fact that they are a direct connection dealership. Meanwhile, these folks are about as dumb as a box full of wet hair, apparently, personal opinion, and is about as disinterested as you could get. But again, they're not here to defend themselves, and maybe they're just having a bad day. I don't know. I'm not always at my best either, but I can tell you this. When the dealership that is supposed to be a direct connection power broker, when they have absolutely no point of sale material, they don't have any livery in the waiting room. They have no livery near the parts counter or the cashier. Nothing of the sort. No parts wall. No nothing. And you're going to make this a power broker. Really interesting. And the cluelessness of it all, I would have felt more at home if I would have felt equally as home as if I were walking into an AutoZone, Parts Depot, O'Reilly's, or whatever. And I hate to say it that way. You can already tell the attitude I'm going to be walking in there with. Anyway, it'll get better before then, though. Chuck, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Super chat in say I was getting a scrape noise when slowing down on my RT shaker. My brakes are only 2 years old. Don't think they're worn. Went to the car wash. Noise went away. Dirt in my Brembos, slotted rotors or pads could have been. I have also, so you can get a bit of a scrape noise with some of these metallic and semi-metallic pads, especially after they get down to about the 50% mark on those pads. It's when you really get a lot more surface area. You know, those pads are kind of tapered initially. It's when you start getting a little bit more surface area on the pad, you'll start to get a little bit of a scrape, a little bit of a squeal or a squeak. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that those semi-metallic pads are just noisy. But in your case, yeah, it could very well have been dirt, debris, whatever the case is, getting up in there and potentially causing an issue. But normally it's the pad material itself, man. This stuff is just noisy. My truck is really bad about that. As a matter of fact, it'll be just fine. And then if I don't really stay on top of car washes and things like that, they'll start to squeak a little bit. So it's kind of the same thing you're running into. Then mine are semi-metallic pads. Hang on. But thank you very much, Chuck. I appreciate that contribution to the cause. One thing I was noticing with the Stop Tech pads is just how quiet they are compared to the stock Hellcat pads. That's something else. The stock Hellcat pads were noisy. Not only they make a mess, and not only are they murder on those rotors. Those things you'll eat through a set of rotors in 20,000 miles. But they were noisy as well. In fact, they had a bit of a grinding sound to them, which always made me kind of freak out a little bit. Let's see. Sovereign saying, I must not. Yeah, Sovereign nabbed it before I got a chance to see it. Sinister said, you do need to lower the rear cradle to get the rear sway bar out. Yeah, no, thank you. I will say, and Sovereign said that's what I thought so too. Sovereign saying, sorry, Brando, not appropriate. My mod's jumping on it. I like it. Rift is saying that his rear driver's side wheel is towed in. So yeah, there is absolutely adjustment back there for toe in, toe out, and for camber as well. In fact, one of the things I was going to ask about was the 0 degree knuckles for the rear suspension. What that would do, I'm just curious how that sets up the rear of this independent rear suspension. What it is it zeroes out the just with the geometry of the thing, it's zeroing out the camber for the rear wheels, supposed to make it launch a little bit flatter. Thing is I don't really have a problem with traction with the Hoosiers, so I don't really need to do the mod to the car, and you can absolutely drag those things back up a little bit if you want to at an alignment shop. Summer saying, Chuck dropping that AJ. Hell yeah. Thanks again, Chuck. I appreciate that, brother. Chuck saying, when I press my brake pedal, so it's good pressure and not sinking. Yeah, it's probably it's probably just the organic semi-metallics, and that's what Sovereign's saying. Once you go ceramic brakes, you never want to go back to those crappy organic ceramic. They eat up the rotor, they make a bunch of noise, and the work truck's going to get ceramics next go around, and they last longer. Absolutely. Rick's asking if ceramics have a problem with noise. I've never had them making noise. The metallics do for sure. Semi-metallics. Let's see. Jay's asking K&N filter or stock Hellcat air filter for the airbox. If you've got a Hellcat, K&N works great. So does the stock Hellcat filter. I have gone, the quickest I've gone with a Hellcat filter is a 1012, I think. 1012 or 1013 with that stock filter. I know a lot of guys, even the pulling guys with that stock filter, were running into the nines. K&N is every bit as effective as what you may expect a cold air kit to be with that stock airbox. So K&N is going to be a little bit better, but the stock filter is going to filter a little bit better. Now, if you've got a naturally aspirated car, just go with the Hellcat filter. That Mala filter flows a ton of air, and it is absolutely a great option for you because not only does it flow a ton of air, but it filters really well. So something to think about. Himmy Dad saying, speaking of brakes, I tried cleaning my wheels today after working on it for a while. I ordered a set of power stops, dude. I'm telling you, there's a lot of us that have done that. In fact, that's one of the things when I still had the slingshots on mine. I walked out, I was cleaning it and got so sick of it so quick that I immediately ordered those Power Stop 26s. Let's see. Oh, Chuck saying I was Chuck saying he was quoted at $1,000 for Mopar pads and slotted on all four. That might be about right. I can tell you that not the Demon, the car rotors, but Demon brand rotors, which are really good. We've used them on customers' cars that do weigh less than stock, by the way. You'd be surprised how heavy the stock rotors are. Those things are $1,200 just by themselves. So I can definitely see that if they're including rotors and pads. Sovereign saying Riff caught that message. Yeah, I didn't even see it. Good job, brother. Sovereign's hanging out with Chuck. Let's see. Super Stock saying, good evening, B. Got the flex. Oh, wait, hold on. I even got my H-Towns right here. There we go. Kobe's in saying, you missed my question. I did? Where was it? What was the question? Did it post? Send it back up, Kobe. I don't know where it went, but I didn't see it, bud. Let's see. Oh, Kobe's asking, what are your thoughts on the inner chiller? Okay, so my thoughts are this. I think that it is a really neat trick to get the cool down feature down to like 50, 40 degrees, all of that. It's really neat to see that during the summertime. Here's what I found about cars with chillers, inner chillers, or anything like that. During the summertime, they're kind of neat to have. They do help a little bit, but, and this is kind of where I start to kind of get a little bit thrown off by them. They work, but the problem with how they work is that they don't really do you any good when the weather is really, really good outside. I've never seen inner chillers add ET to a car. Now, what I will say is this. They do drop temperature somewhat, but it's not like it's dropping temperature a crazy amount after the bricks. It helps, but if you're just a dude cruising around and you're not trying to get a number out of the car specifically, you're not trying to get numbers out of your car when the ambient temperature is above 75 to 80 degrees, I would probably tell you to move in another direction if you're looking to pick up power. If, however, you are a double pulleyed Hellcat, 275 upper, 10% lower, running on the E85, I would say that in that respect, and you're really leaning on the thing, in that respect, it might help you for temperatures down to about 65 or 60 degrees. Anything less than that, and I don't think that contraption really does a whole lot of good for you. So, and take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. There are guys that swear by that thing, and it can aid in making the car more consistent in warmer temperatures. But you have to remember that the car has to be running for that thing to be working. And the problem is that now you're basically heat soaking the engine, and you're trying to basically get as much downstream heat as you can out of that discharge side, the manifold side. It works, but I don't think that it works as well as folks would hope. If you're going to be doing mile events, you need to be running a ice tank in the back. Those do help, but again, there's weight, complexity, and everything else. So hopefully that answers your question. I know it's not the most favorable answer, but I think it's an honest assessment of how that thing works. And look, everybody's going to tell you, well, isn't the coolant temperature being so far much lower, et cetera? Look, think of it like this. Is it better? If it's super cold and you've got hot, warm air, moist air going through your bricks, and that thing is ice cold, it's going to be a condensation issue. So at some point, it can get so low that you're actually dragging the moisture clean out of that air. And now you've got droplets of water. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that I don't think it works quite as well as it's listed, at least not in all situations. Sean's saying the sound is in and out. Yeah. Hey, Chuck, thank you very much again, brother. Should I go with ceramic to save weight on my Brembos, or more of a performance factor with that? Do I still use slotted rotors? I'm not familiar with ceramic systems. So the best setup typically is going to be some type of a ceramic brake, and that ceramic brake is going to be paired up with new slotted rotors. The slot is there just to kind of get some of the dust out of the way and to basically swipe across the pad. And that helps with stopping and dissipating heat, believe it or not. It's kind of a weird thing, the way this stuff works. Thermodynamics is weird. But to go with a full system, that would be the best. Now, the way that your car is set up, though, I don't know that you would notice any real difference unless you are really hammering this thing on a road course. You wouldn't even really notice the difference in an autocross course because there's really not enough time and not enough speed to generate enough heat to really throw those brakes into fade. But what it would do is it would at least make the brakes last longer in that environment when you've got a lot of acceleration and then a lot of braking. So in my opinion, I would say stop techs for sure and run your stock rotors with those pads. I wouldn't really get into the rotors too much. If the rotors don't need to be resurfaced, then you're in good shape, and I would just leave them as they sit. Just go with the different pads and you'll be good, but make sure you get front and rear. Don't just do the front and leave the stock ones in the rear. That setup doesn't work too well. The Stop Tech front and rear is what I run, and the car woes really nicely. And so that would be what I would probably do if I were you. Again, if you're not doing anything really competitive with the car, leave the stock rotors in place and just go with those pads. You'll be real happy with them. I think. I know I was. Stuart's got a good question. He's asking, hey, B, if you switch over to a 309 gear and a Hellcat, do you have to tune, or is it purely a mechanical difference that gives it more response? Thank you for the super chat, by the way, guys. I suggest, yes, you do have to put a tune in the car. Now, that tune, put this in air quotes, can come in the form of a pedal box, pedal commander, products like that will give you extra throttle response because you are losing actual load by going to the 309. The car can actually feel a little bit less punchy with the 309 until you get the thing to about half throttle. That's when the thing will actually kind of wake up a little bit, bypass actually slams shut, and you're on your way. But what I noticed with the 309 cars is without a tune, the 309 cars have a funny habit or just seem to be a little bit lazy. The other thing is that so you can just go with that. Okay. That'll work out actually pretty well. But if you want to get real nitpicky about things, there are some things in the transmission tune. Some of it mainly has to do with torque management at low torque load levels that when you go in and make some of these changes, the car will actually be better under partial throttle. None of this has anything to do with wide open throttle, by the way. It's all drivability, partial throttle. It's all basically it's the experience under the curve that you'll be picking up with that. So the other thing is if you're taking that car to the drag strip, you put a 309 gear in the car and you're in really good DA and you're running the thing on a drag pack wheel and tire setup. What can happen is you'll get a 1-2, what's known as a shift yip or a 1-2 shift yip. And what that is it's a situation where the predictive shift algorithm thinks that you're going to hit a rev limit. And so it pulls throttle so that it can make the shift and then applies throttle again. It can happen really quickly. And it usually only happens when you're dealing with really low, really good density altitude conditions. The acceleration rate is just too quick and it's blasting through first gear that quickly. And so it does this little yip, and there's ways to change the parameters in the tune so that it'll stay out of that little yip situation. If you're just mainly doing it for the street, pedal box, pedal commander, and a 309 gear will be exactly what the doctor ordered, though. But thank you all very much. I appreciate that. Chuck saying, smash that like button. Absolutely smash that like button. Let's see. Let me get back where I was over here. I was lost my spot. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Let's see. Riff's asking, I run E85 now, but my friends are trying to get me to run E98. They all say that I can gain around 50 wheel horsepower. Do you know this to be true? No, it's not true. With one exception. So if you kick up the ethanol content in that way, what you'll be doing is you'll be running an aftermarket fuel, which is going to be more consistent. So in that case, you can, as a tuner, your tuner can potentially get a little bit more aggressive with the tune, but I don't know that you're going to see a whole lot coming from E98 versus E85. And there's some argument, to be perfectly honest with you, there's some argument that says that you are pretty much maxing out what it's like you get to a certain law of diminishing returns, or at least law of no more returns, marginal utility. What it basically states is that at about 70% ethanol, you will hit that wall of marginal utility. So the difference in power gain is not going to be that great. Now, again, your double pulley, you want to get the most you can out of that car, then yes, E98 might be great. But just remember, it's E98, which means cold start issues are going to be even more pronounced with that fuel potentially. And your range is going to be limited as well if you're going to be running around with that. So just know that coming into it, not to mention it's expensive, but I don't think that you're going to see 50 horsepower unless you've got a milder tune on E85, which could very well be the case, because if you're tuned for street E85, some tuners will, they'll drain the tank, basically throw 3 gallons of 93 in the tank and then top the thing off with E85 just to make sure that you've achieved a lower ethanol content. But I don't think 50 horsepower is really, I don't think you're going to find that there. That'd be a tough ask, because you got to remember, so there's only so much timing you can run in the engine before you reach maximum brake torque timing. And there's actually in the tune, there's an MBT table. And for most of these cars, that's going to be around what you would see indicated as 23 degrees of timing. And if you can get to that 20, 21, 22 with ethanol, you got to remember, you've only got a couple of more degrees of timing before you're going to be on the other side of the timing curve, meaning you're overtimed and you're going to start to lose power. One of the things about E85 that I've noticed, especially with the lower boost cars or with the NA cars for sure. Yeah, excuse me. You can take and the NA cars are fun to do this. You just start stacking timing and you go from, it could be any engine combination. Let's talk about Hemis though. And I understand it. The timing numbers are low, but there's also built in anyway. You can start off at 13 and then 15 and then 17 and then 20 and then 21. And you can just keep throwing timing at the car and you'll see the power come up, and then you'll start to see it drop. And it's funny because you just kind of crest this little hill, and there's kind of a happy spot right in there, and you just kind of add timing until it doesn't like it anymore, and then drag it back a couple of degrees, and you're good on E85. 85 is a cheat code too. I like that stuff. Gary, hey buddy, thank you very much. Saying glad to make it back to the live chat. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate that, brother. Glad to have you back. Chuck's asking, thank you very much, buddy. I appreciate that. And you too, Chuck, saying, will a shaker raising kit help with air intake on my Challenger, or is it just cosmetic? Oh, well, a shaker kit. So the actual full shaker apparatus is the absolute best, in my opinion, air delivery system for the Challenger. It'd be kind of neat if I could actually fab one up to work on the Hellcat. But that one and the twin snorkel are really good at getting air. It's not just cosmetic. Now, what does it get you? I don't know. I can tell you this, a shaker 392 scat with some weight reduction and a stock tune, basically the passenger seat removed, and on a drag pack will run 1150s in really good air. And that's saying a lot, because a typical scat pack core will run 70s. So I think it's worth about a 10th in the quarter mile. So there's that. But I mean, that's a 10th in really good air. Plus it looks cool. I've kind of kicked myself a little bit for not initially getting a shaker scat. In fact, if I would have, I'd probably still have it. There for a while, I was actually trying to find a shaker 5.7. Those are hard to come by, and they're expensive. But thank you, Chuck. Appreciate that. Stewart's in. Thank you very much, brother, for the contribution as well. Asking, are pulleys with a decoupler less stressful on the supercharger bearings, specifically Linton's Hellraiser 285 pulley? Yeah, they are. So they're easier on the supercharger, not necessarily the bearings, but the actual gear drive itself. The bearings don't really care, to be honest with you. They're not going to really be affected. You got to remember, there's guys that have run normal pulleys, like a non-decoupler pulley on superchargers since there was a supercharger. So that part of it's not the big issue. Where the decouplers help is on the load on the crank, on the actual balancer. That's really where that load is felt the most. And one of the reasons why I had my crank pinned is, well, for one, I'm not putting pulleys on my car, and if I did, it would only be an upper pulley. And so the idea was, as often as I take my car to the drag strip, even though it's got a decoupler on decel, there's still quite a bit of tension. So the crank's pinned, but it is less of a load on the crank. If you decide that you want to put a pulley on the car and don't want to pin the crank, then go with the decoupler. Do not run the Hellraiser though with a lower crank pulley. It is guaranteed to fly apart. I've seen it happen. It's not pretty. So just keep that in the back of your mind when you're looking to swap those over. But thank you guys. I really appreciate that contribution, man. It really, really helps a ton. Let me get back up here and try to check in with you guys. Sovereign's asking, how often do I replace my air cleaner for an ES350? I think it might be due for me. What happens if you use an air filter that's past due changing? Poor gas mileage, power loss? Poor gas mileage, yes. Power loss, absolutely. How often do you swap them out? Every other oil change is how often I swap out the work truck and my 350Z when I had the 350Z. So every other oil change, the filters get either cleaned if they're cleanable, or they will get replaced if they're the paper kind. Sovereign said the braking system is way more expensive, I take it, on the Hellcat versus Scat Pack. Yeah, obnoxiously more expensive. Sovereign's asking, doesn't the Hellcat use a 3-piece rotor? It uses a 2-piece on the front. It's got the rotor, and then it's got the hat that is bolted to those rotors. Chuck, I guess this was that message. You won $600 playing poker. What? Sweet. You know what's funny is that I get bored so quickly with poker. I'll do okay for about 5 minutes, and then I'm off the table. Oh, Cody's saying that's what I thought. Yeah. Someone's saying sounds fine on him, so that's good. Working with a little bit of a sketchy internet connection, so I wouldn't doubt it if we're jacked up. And again, Stuart, thank you very much, man. I appreciate the contribution and the question. Gary's saying, hello, everybody. It's been a while. Summer saying ceramic is so good. Talking about the brake pads for sure. Ruth saying thumbs up for sure. Sean's saying he got the sound back. Very good. Marco's saying I'm ripping the vet listening to you. Nice. I like it. Be careful out there. Oh, okay. So speaking of ripping, so let's talk a little bit about this whole sway bar thing. By the way, I did fix that clunk or the bump or whatever in the suspension that was driving me nuts. What the clunk was, so to give you guys an idea, you would take and those of you guys that are in the know, in fact, I'll scroll down here. I'll let you guys see if you can guess the problem. Left-hand turn, no bump, no clunk, no anything. Straighten the car out, clunk and bump every time. Very predictable. What do you think that might have been? I'll let y'all ponder that for a second. It's going to jump right off the screen when I tell you what happened. Roy, thank you very much, buddy. Said another one from Mr. B Teacher. I like it. Appreciate that. Keep live chat going. Absolutely. Yeah, I've been booked for the last couple of weeks. So been really itching to get back on the live show, man. I get separation anxiety from you guys. I got to get on here. But thank you, Roy. I appreciate that. Let's see. Truck, smash the like button. And again, Gary, Chuck, Stuart, thanks, guys. I appreciate that, man. Thank you all very much. Sovereign's got the clouds. I know it. What's funny is that it actually started raining. So get a load of this. I swapped the sway bar out, and the car's been on the drag pack since Nationals, and put the street setup back on the car because it's going to be basically road trip season. Wife and I are going to be, taking the car in and around Texas, and it does great for that. And so I put the street setup back on the car, and I got to tell you guys, that Scat Pack front bar is really, really nice on the Hellcat. And to give you guys an idea, it feels a lot like having my SRT back. And the reason why I say that is the Hellcat Challenger front sway bar is incredibly heavy, and it's incredibly stiff. So I'm saving about 11 pounds off the front of the car by switching over to the Scat Pack bar. But the other thing that there's a couple of neat side benefits that I got out of that. And the whole reason for that is I was switching out sway bar bushings. But one of the interesting things that I came away with this was I've got all driving modes make sense now, as opposed to being only able to run the car in street and having sport and track basically beat you half to death. The street mode now feels a little bit softer, but it also feels a little bit more balanced with the Scat Pack front sway bar. Sport mode feels basically the same as it did in the SRT, because it has the same front sway bar that the SRT had, which, let me just kind of talk about that for a second. When I got my SRT, it was basically sold as having the same suspension as the Hellcat. It just didn't have the Hellcat engine, it had the 392, but everything else was the same. And in essence, it was. But come to find out, throughout putting this sway bar experiment together, come to find out the 392 SRT, the one that's billed as having the same suspension, the sport track and street modes and the big brakes and everything else, has the Scat Pack front and rear sway bar. I found that to be kind of interesting. I was a little bit pissed off about that because that's one of the reasons why I bought the SRT was for the suspension. Anyway, getting back to it, now the car has suspension that feels more like a street car, a really well set up street car. In fact, street is now really well balanced. So we have some new roads here in Velocito, and they go on for miles, and it's just nothing but a lot of sweeps and, some straightaways, bridges, overpasses, things like that. It's really kind of cool. And it's right here in Velocito. So I took the car out on the street setup and have run it in street and sport primarily. Track's still a little bit stiff, but it's not as bad as what it used to be. With the softer front sway bar and the much lighter front sway bar, the car feels balanced enough, and I'm running at obnoxious speeds running around on this road. There's nobody out there. It's all brand new stuff. It's really, really, it's really kind of cool to be able to experience a road like this. And I'll put it to you like this. I was cruising, call it a mega cruise, and just take that wherever you want, but significant RPM in 8th gear. And the car felt planted. It felt great. And I could switch from street to sport. The car felt perfectly planted. And I was very surprised by that, because you would think that, well, if I had the Hellcat front sway bar, it should feel more planted. When in actuality, with the Hellcat front sway bar, the car felt more twitchy. That's really the only way I can describe it. The car felt just a little too darty. And with the newer sway bar, it does feel like it's got a little bit better turn in, but it doesn't feel as twitchy with the new Scat Pack SRT 392 and practically every other car that's not a Hellcat Challenger front sway bar. So anyway, fun experience, fun experiment. And I just kind of fell into this. I started off life trying to fix a clunk in the suspension that was driving me nuts, and thought that it was sway bar bushings, and thought, maybe I can go ahead and just swap the thing out. And I was initially looking for a 1320 bar, and happy accident, I found what I thought was a 1320 bar. It was actually a mislabeled Scat Pack bar, which took me into a little bit different it took me to a little bit different place, because now I'm looking up, what does this bar do? What does that bar do? And it learned a whole lot about sway bars. I'll just put it to you that way. Who knew it'd be so much fun? So anyway, cool opportunity to bring to you guys this information, because the car is, I'm not going to say like miles different, but and I swear to you, I will say this. I will go on record as saying, at first I thought it was a placebo effect, but when I put the car in sport mode, it was pretty obvious that there was a somewhat of a difference for sure, because even in sport mode with that very heavy, very, very stiff sway bar, sport mode would have a tendency to be a little bit bouncy. Now it's still a little bouncy, but it's nowhere near what it was before. Funny thing about that sway bar though, it's a 34 millimeter solid bar, and it's listed as being the competition suspension. Again, why the SRT didn't have that escapes me. But the other thing is, it's listed as competition with the other bar being listed as sport suspension, whatever that's supposed to mean. But just some more things that I noticed throughout the whole journey of putting this different sway bar on the car. So anyway, I wanted to get you guys that driving impression as well. I know I'll put up a couple of sway bar videos, but I wanted to at least give you guys an opportunity to ask questions and kind of talk about what I was able to do with the car today, which was actually really cool, and let you guys know that it worked out really well. So thank you all for the opportunity to be able to do that for you guys. Greg's asking, B, compare my 2012 392 Challenger 5-speed auto versus my new 2021 Shaker 392 8-speed. Yes. What rear gear ratio did they use on the NAG 1 trans cars? It was also a 309. Pulled my options list, and my new one has the 309. Yes, it does. The older ones have the Getrag, however you say it, 309 gears with the limited slip. The newer one will have the 230 millimeter ZF rear end. And that thing can handle a lot of power, by the way. So we're saying 392 Shaker would be awesome. They are a lot of fun. Riff saying, I'm also worried about not using the decoupler pulley. I have a 268 pulley on mine, and I'm worried about the bearings since it's a 2015. Bro, if you haven't started having problems with it now, you're not going to have problems with it, especially running a 268. The only thing I would worry about with that is making sure that your pulley is cranked. Your crank is pinned. What's wrong with my brain? Anyway, make sure that crank's pinned and you'll be fine. There's a lot of guys that are running and turning those things really hard. So I really wouldn't worry about it too much. Amy Dad saying, man, I want a Shaker for the cat. I know, right? It'd look cool as hell. Chuck saying, I have a stock Shaker RT hood system, but they make a rising kit to make it up higher. Very cool. Let's see. Ruth saying, never heard the word raising for that. Sounds kind of cool. Chuck saying, you have to replace the boot as well. I believe it comes with the Shaker kit. Summer saying this is overdue. Oh, Stuart's asking for an impact wrench. Do you like the corded electric or cordless better? I always go cordless. I actually have a corded impact wrench that I haven't used. Let me think about this for a minute. I haven't used that thing in probably 5 years. But the corded ones will be a little bit stronger, but and when it comes to impacts, here's one thing. I don't use impacts on lug nuts. I'd use them for, something heavy, but never ever use an impact ever on lug nuts. Not the big hammer kind anyway. Let's see. Jay's asking, best bang for your buck, the RT Scat Pack or the Hellcat? Damn, that's a good question. Bang for your buck. So the Scat Pack, you can use more of that car on the street. In fact, you can use all the power that you bought in the Scatty on the street. Throw a set of drag radials on the back of it, and you can have more fun with that than you'll ever know. The only problem with Scat Packs comes if you want to try to tangle with somebody from a roll. They're just not designed for that. You'd be surprised how well they will hold their own, though. But they're just not a roll race type of a setup. Neither is a Hellcat, though. So just kind of know that coming into it. Now, you can pulley the thing, make as much power as you want, but you get the idea. On the street, you can use all the power that you bought with the Scat Pack. And to be honest with you, the Hellcat requires some things done to it to really make it right. Unless you're talking about a Hellcat Charger. The Hellcat Challenger, in my opinion, needs a 309 gear, a tune, or at least a 309 gear and a pedal commander, or it needs the Scat Pack front sway bar. And I would throw a JLT on it just so you can get the noise. But even with that, you don't have to. Throw a K&N filter in the stock air box if you want. But that's about as far as I would take a stock Hellcat if you're not going to tune it. The tune makes all the difference in the world in a Hellcat. And really, it's not about making power. It's just about transmission tuning more than anything else. But man, I really like the Scats on the street. They're fun. And again, you can use all the power that you bought. You can't with a Hellcat. The weird thing about the Hellcat with a 262 gear, if you've got a Scat Pack, one of the things I used to tell new Hellcat owners that came from Scatties basically went like this. And your cruise speed is going to go up by about 15 miles per hour, maybe 20 miles an hour. So if you're used to cruising at 75, don't be surprised if just by the sounds and everything else that you end up cruising at 90 everywhere you go. And it's a lot to do with the gearing and how the car just goes down the road. The Scat Pack has some endearing qualities. They're real snappy, high compression, large displacement engine. They're a lot of fun to drive. The Hellcat can be a little bit lazy when you're not in boost. And that is one of the odd things that Hellcat owners that come from Scat Packs, when they say it, they'll say it and they kind of look down in a way. And the reason why they're looking down in a way is because 9 out of 10 times they're missing their Scat Pack. So that's not to say that I would trade my car on a Scat Pack or an SRT, but I will say this: the more little SRT / Scat Pack mods that I do to my car, the more I like it. So my car has the rear end out of a Scat Pack. Now it has the front sway bar out of a Scat Pack or SRT 392. And it's kind of like I got Shalandra back when I put that sway bar in the car. It chilled it out just a little bit, just enough to kind of bring back those memories, bring back that feel, bring back that balance that the SRT had over and above the Hellcat. So, and that's another thing. Scatties really do handle better than the Hellcats. Mainly because they don't have an extra 100 pounds hanging off the front of the car. And again, Roy, thank you very much, buddy. I appreciate the contribution. Oh, Riff's saying I would say the Scat Pack for just around town and cruising for sure. Kobe's saying inner fender well. That was his guess. No, but good guess. Roy's saying the clunk and bump is your mufflers in the back. No, but that would also be a good guess. Stuart said I took the sway bar off my Hellcat. The thing is so heavy, it's better to use it to do curls. Yeah. When the thing weighs twice as much as a bowling ball, you know something's not exactly right. So I will answer the question as far as what was actually wrong with the car, with that bump that I was experiencing. And the bump was significant. You could feel it in the footwell of the car. It was bam, but it was a pop. It was like popping your knuckles almost. What it was the driver's side. So the left hand end link was loose. But here's the funny thing. The way that end link is set up, it can be fully seated. And if you look at it, it looks like everything's cool. And so it's like, you wiggle it and there's nothing wrong with it. But in reality, it was loose. And what you have to do is you have to use a 10 millimeter wrench and a 21 millimeter. What happens is the way that those things work is that the inner part actually kind of sticks out like this. Anyway, the inner part, when you tighten it down, tightens the whole thing together. The outer part, which is the knuckle and the nut itself, along with the bolt that basically makes up that knuckle. Well, if it's loose, you can't tell by just looking at it or moving around. What I did, I figured, look, it's got to be something to do with either end links or sway bar bushings. So what I did is I took the tire and wheel assembly off the front, set it to the side. obviously it was up in the air and it was dangling. And what I did is I put my hand, I had the jack stands down for safety and all that, put my hand around the sway bar end link and the strut itself and just started jacking the thing up. And I figured at some point I'm going to force it to get to the same level to where it'll pop again. And so sure enough, I was lifting it up and it just went pop, and it was like, what the I mean, it was significant. So I was like, okay, lowered everything back down. And at the first time I did it, I was on the bottom, the bottom part of that end link. And actually at that point I was on the bottom on the driver's side, just kind of jacking the car up, or jacking the suspension up. The car was up in the air. So I was like, whoa, wait a minute. That was for sure that end link. So then I felt at the top to see where it was really messed up. Was it the strut? What was the deal? Started moving it up, and I actually felt the top move, the top part of that end link move when it popped. It got to where I could actually make it pop on cue. It's like, oh, I've got a bad end link. So I put the wrench on the thing and just said, oh, maybe if I tighten it up a little bit, and the wrench just goes like that. And I was like, oh my gosh. So anyway, tighten it down. It's all good. So if you get a situation like that, check those end links first. You'll need a 10 millimeter and a 21 millimeter. Don't just take a 21 millimeter and turn it. That's going to loosen up that actual knuckle. You actually have to hold that bolt in place with your 10 millimeter and then come behind it and then rack that thing over and just tighten it down really good. Torque spec on that, I think, is 105 foot-pounds or something like that. So chances are you won't over torque it because the angle of the dangle of the jingle of the jangle. So let's see. Chuck saying, I was in my RT Shaker doing some pulls with a TRX in town. Man, that truck is sick. They're eerily strong. Gary, thank you very much, brother. Saying years ago when I worked at a performance shop, I know we had some issues with green cats on high horsepower cars failing. What are your thoughts on greens for the NA Scat? I haven't heard of any issues with the greens. Thank you for the contribution too, brother. Appreciate that a ton, man. I haven't heard of any having any issues, but I would probably, if you could get away with it, just run the 200 cell metallic substrates. The only time I've ever seen those fail was in a Hellcat that was tuned by a reputable shop. You know how that goes. Anyway, believe it or not, that is the car that sold me on getting a Hellcat. This car was very, it was just such a botched job, and the car had every right to explode, and it held together and did great. So, but they failed due to a really bad tune. But I would probably default to a set of 200 cell metal substrates. Never heard of the greens failing, but we didn't use a lot of the greens either. Let me think about that for a minute. I actually can't tell you any other catalytic converter failures that we ran into. None that I can think of. I had one on my Cobra it's been almost 20 years ago that failed though. But that was also because I shouldn't have been beating on the car. I put a set of high flow cats on it so it would pass a sniffer. And I ended up blowing the cats completely out of the exhaust. The car ripped the cats completely apart. First and only time I've ever seen a car do that. J Master's asking, any tips on launching my 1320? Best I've got to 190, 160 foot on a tire. This was on bad prep DA at 3,900. Well, if you're on the stock Nexans, do a 1-2 burnout, get out of the water box by about 4 or 5 feet, do a 1-2 burnout, basically just get the tires wet, pull out of the box about 4 or 5 feet, 1-2 burnout, just long enough to where you see the tires whiff, smoke, and then just kind of roll off the throttle, let your momentum carry you forward, stage the car, stall it up to about 1,500 RPM, and then as you're coming off the brake, it's going to be just like this, that you're going to roll into the throttle. You're not going to watt the thing hard, but it's going to be about a quarter of a second from when you put pressure on the throttle to move it to where it hits the floor. That will help you hook up in those poorly prepped conditions with those cars. And when I've driven them like that, they usually hook up pretty good. But it takes practice. Basically, it's a walking cadence. Like when you're walking, the heel toe, that movement, that's about the speed, that quarter of a second. And if you think 1001 with the 4 parts, 1 is the 1 count. So it's not 1, it's 1. And that's how you manage the throttle with that. And that will usually help you get the thing out of the hole a little bit easier. Bring those 60-foot times down a little bit. Sovereign Knights about the bang for the buck. Scat's the best bang for the buck. Also, overall cost of ownership, much less, for sure. Let's see. Sovereign saying some people going and buying a Hellcat don't realize the headache and overall cost of ownership. Part of that overall cost of ownership is you start to learn pretty quickly that it's a lot more car than what people expect it to be. And again, I will go back to, and Scat Pack will do this too, but the ease of just rolling down the highway at significant speeds of vehicle going down the roadage at Mega Cruise. That's the only way to explain it. Anyway, at those types of speed, the issue that you have with Hellcats is that you find out pretty quickly that 700 horsepower doesn't feel like 700 horsepower. And you feel more of the 500 horsepower than you feel of the 700 horsepower. Let's see. Rift is asking, I've been trying to find a name for my 2015 Redline. Hellcat, was wondering if it's cool if I use Revlon. If not, all good. Just was wondering, you can call it whatever you want. Call it Revlon, sure. My car's got all kinds of names. Chandelier is the latest name. Revlon was honestly just kind of a placeholder name for that car. It was where that name came from was my wife asked what color it was. I said it's Redline red. And she goes, Revlon. She was kind of messing with me. And so that's where the name came from. But yeah, Chandelier is the official name of the car. So, and it's always, my cars always have some stripper type name. So you had, and it's a play on the words. So Shalandra was the first Challenger, and then Chandelier is the red one, the Hellcat. So yeah, go ahead, use it, run with it. Hemi Dad, thank you very much. Saying Professor B, I've been getting to know the M6 cat. It's a different animal than the Scat for sure. Spinning and grinning all the time. Cat feels boggy in first, but ends up triple digits real fast. And that's a lot to do with that 226 or 228 first gear ratio that those cars have. They've got a first gear that just seems to go forever and ever. And so it can be a little bit of a bear out of the hole, but they're a lot of fun to drive. And again, Barton shifter, clutch restrictor mod, and I mean, hell, that's really all you need. I know some guys will try to put the 392 gear the 3.92 gear out of the 392 manual transmission cars. Sorry, I'm trying to inhale that apparently. But I don't know that it would do you a whole lot of good but those two mods alone will make it a little bit more fun. The shifter for sure. And a pedal commander if you don't want to get a tune. I know some guys that swear by pedal commanders for the manual cars. But thank you very much, man. I appreciate that very much. X is saying, what up, Professor B? What up, X? Oh, hey, one thing. Yeah, I appreciate you guys. The super chats, I really appreciate that, guys. One thing I wanted to let y'all know there, and I can see you guys, obviously, when y'all send super chats over. YouTube started this thing called Super Thanks. I'm not telling you guys to do this. I'm not saying go to my videos and hit the little Super Thanks thing. So I don't know when those come through. I am not notified. So unless somebody tells me they did it, I'm not notified of those. So I wanted to make sure I had meant to bring that up earlier on in the chat. It's kind of it's a very, very, very new thing that YouTube is doing. So if you're on one of the regular videos and you see this little heart with a $sign, that's what it is. But it doesn't notify me. Like I don't get a notification saying, somebody super thanks to you. It doesn't work like that yet. If it ever does or ever will, at least I haven't been able to see it work like that. So I just wanted to let y'all know that if y'all have done it, I don't see it. I mean, unless you tell me, I won't know about it. Kind of a weird thing. And I'm sure there's something in the, I don't know, whatever the data sheet or whatever you can get with this stuff. I'm sure there's something in there. I just haven't seen it yet. I've been a little bit tied up, so I haven't been able to take a look at it. So if you have, thank you very much. I really, truly appreciate it. Oh, earthquake. It doesn't notify me. I don't know. And if I think one person had said, hey, I shot you over a super thanks. I was like, thank you very much. I responded to that. But anyway, just a heads up for that, guys. I don't want you to think that I'm seeing it and not being thankful, because I am very thankful. Dad's Garage. Hey, thank you very much, buddy. Saying no Mopar in the garage anymore, but still got to get my education from the professor. Well, thank you very much. I talk about a lot of stuff, not just Mopars. So hopefully I can help you with something else too. X is in saying, what up, Professor B? I like it. Yeah, I got the 275s on the back, and they are amazing. Awesome. Glad you like them. I love those tires on those cars. I can't believe I waited 2 years to put them on. It should be a crime putting the 245s on these cars. I agree. I am stoked that you got those. In fact, I'm seeing them more and more on Scats. And the car should have come like that. I have no idea why the Scats don't come equipped like that. It drives me nuts. Chuck saying 245s are skinnies. They are fun on my Challenger. Absolutely. Madeire's asking, have you ever seen the Mustang two-door hatchback, basically a smaller version of the Galaxy Country Squire? There were actually a few of those back in the day. You'd be surprised how many estate type cars were being made out of Corvettes, F-bodies at the time, Mustangs, all kinds of crazy stuff was being made. So yeah, I've seen, I think I know which one you're talking about. Saying honestly, it would have been a cool Mustang hatchback. Yeah. I mean, it would have been pretty sweet. So we're saying going down the roadage. Yep. Gary's saying, thanks, Pete. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you. Jimmy Ash saying, thanks for the launching tips. I'm on 305-45-17 ET Street R. Should my burnout be heavier with that tire than the Nexans, or about the same? I've heard these tires can get greasy if you run them hot. 305 45 17. I do that. That is the procedure that I told you is my burnout. In fact, when you go on, when you first get on my channel, the video that pops up right away is a video of my car running a 1017. I think the burnout in that video I think it's in that video. Anyway, that's my standard burnout. And then, of course, if you ever hang out on one of the ride-along videos, you're in the car and you can actually like hear me going through the gears in that car. So, I'll go through the water, pull about 4 feet up, so I'm not doing the burnout in the water. And then I'll go for the NA cars, I'll go first gear, second gear, and then I'll just give it about 3 or 4 seconds just to let the tires start to haze, and then I'll roll off the throttle. But you can see how I do in the Hellcat with that 309 gear in it. Now that's a third gear, but it's also a Hellcat. I'm getting a little bit more heat in those tires. But hopefully that helps you out. I've got a lot of footage of me doing the burnouts. So hopefully that'll help you. You don't have to go as deep as I do sometimes. Sometimes it's just, I get a little bit carried away, and I like making smoke come out of tires. But yeah, stick with that and you'll be in good shape. And really, they don't get those tires really don't necessarily get greasy. You're just unnecessarily cooking them down. Gasto's asking thoughts on a 2010 Dodge Charger SRT8. Good car, fun car. And again, thank you, Dad's Garage. I appreciate that, buddy. Oh, Chuck saying Pedal Commander, my RT Shaker 6 has been smiles per mile. Absolutely. Oh, Riff saying, thank you for the info on the rear sway bar end link. Absolutely. Hopefully that helps with some of the noise I hear if that's the problem. Yeah, absolutely. Check that out, though, for sure. That may help. Blues are saying, how's it going tonight, B? It's going good, man. I recently picked up a V6 300 for a dirt race car. That'll be fun. Planning on welding the diff and running old school NASCAR paint schemes. Should be a good time. Absolutely. That's a car where you just don't ever have to lift. Silver Knights hanging out with Dad's Garage. Let's see. Say it feels strange not having one. I understand that. Yeah. Dad's going to say, B told me I would get over it pretty quickly. He nailed it. Yes. Siren saying, welcome to Gasto. Thank you very much, Gasto, for joining us. Jimenez saying, I had an intercoolant low message flash up on a hard pull, but not since. Do I just need to top it off? Probably. Yeah, as a matter of fact, keep an eye on that. The cap on... And I'm filming on the laptop, but if you look at my car, the cap on those things seems to leak a little bit, just a tiny little bit, and they'll off gas a little bit. So, yeah, just keep an eye on that. Also, make sure you don't have any leaks underneath the car or anything like that. Oh, Sovereign saying I pass this Greek restaurant every day and I see a white red-eye Challenger. Damn, it looks so good in red with black wheels. Yeah, they do. Yeah, that's a good-looking car. I guarantee that's a good-looking car. I'm trying to think of. Oh, so yeah. So for you guys, I know a lot of there's a lot of topics on issues with the front suspension on these cars. And I can tell you that my car has hundreds of passes on it. And it's not like hundreds as in 100 or 200. I think the car's got, I don't know, 400 or 500. I don't even know how many hundreds of passes the thing has on it. And the front suspension's doing great. It's just that, the end link was just a little bit loose. Again, you do have to use that 10 millimeter to hold the bolt in place. If you don't, you probably end up making it worse. So just kind of know that coming into that. And then check torque on everything too. Make sure you don't have anything loose before you start buying up a bunch of parts. I'm not saying I regret putting that sway bar on my car. In fact, I don't. I'm really stoked that I did. But, it's just one of those things where it was a happy accident. I'll just put it to you that way. Chuck saying, Mopar Brotherhood, night all. Thank you for your info tonight, B. Thank you very much, man. Appreciate it. Your training tips have made a more potent muscle car driver. Well, thank you, sir. I got the flex. Hopefully I'm helping. That's the main thing. And it's all about practice, 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 practice. The more you practice, the better you get. The more you fail, the better you get. I'll tell you that for sure. That's one of the things that I learned. I've failed a lot. Boy, can I tell you, I'm good at that. Sorry, saying later, Chuck. Have a great Sunday. But thank you very much, brother. I appreciate all the support, man. I really do. Gary's asking, where do we get a Mopar Chat Live t-shirt? So I need to get some more made, and I need to figure out a way to get them on a website or something like that. I need to put something like that together. But that's something that I'm going to try to work on this summer for you guys, to try to get some shirts made and some different designs. This is an old design. This is the very first design I ever came up with. So hopefully I can get that knocked out here just very shortly. Thank you again, Chuck. Appreciate it, brother. Chuck saying, racing my friend in his V6 steer tomorrow. Grudge match. I toasted him last time. Nice. Junk's asking if I've heard anything about super stocks being able to use the 100 octane fuel from the factory. I don't know if it's just rumors or not. You can run 100 octane in those cars. Actually, Hellcats benefit a lot from running 100 octane, primarily because the tune in Hellcats is hot enough to where it almost warrants running 100 octane fuel, believe it or not, especially in colder, very cold air. The red eye itself, there's no provision in the tune for the high octane. Now, there was at one point an option. That was a high octane option, I think, for the red eye. I remember because I was doing a configure and it was in the configuration. The other thing, it would be the Mopar tune, which would be the Mopar tune for the red eye for the high octane. See where this is going, right? Just the stock tune, it won't get a ton of benefit from the 100 octane fuel, but it will at least get some, and it'll keep you out of having short-term knock retard. But unless you can actually throw timing at the car, and the red eye is a bit timing neutered, you won't really be able to take advantage of the 100 octane. The other issue with the red eye is that even with extra timing, you don't necessarily pick up a ton of power with that thing. In fact, one of the things that we noticed, especially with those and the Demons, is that unless you made the switch to E85 and were really able to throw the screws to it, you didn't see huge gains with it. So when you can start running closer to MBT type numbers, that maximum brake torque type timing number, that's when they start really picking up power. So it's kind of a flat spot where you try to throw 2, 3, 4 degrees of timing at it with race gas, and it's like, it picks up a little bit. And then throw E85 at it and, be able to run 20, 21, 22 degrees of timing, and the power just goes, yep, and just hops right up. So take that with a grain of salt. If you've got a super stock, it might be a little bit of good to run 100, but it's mainly more for consistency than anything else. Gusto saying, I got to hit the hay. Have a great Sunday. Well, thank you for joining us, man. I appreciate it. I got the flex. Anthony's asking, are 6.4s and scat packs reliable? Yes, they are. I have found them to be reliable. Yes. Know a lot of guys with a lot of miles on those things. KDC's in saying, hey, Mason, got a hold of 17-inch Race Star rims and 305 ET Street SSs on my Cam 2014 Challenger RT and average 4.4 to 4.5, 0 to 60 consistently. They made a world of difference. Very nice, and it's going to be a lot of fun with those tires, too. Got the flex. Jim is in. What's up, brother? Saying, thanks, Pete. Now, tomorrow, I'm going to have to find an excuse to look under my wife's Charger RT. I may just have to do a sway bar swap. So check it out. The part number on that, well, first of all, it'll be real easy to identify because it'll be a bar, and then it'll have the little the blocking rings for the bushings that basically they terminate at the ring. Well, it'll be a silver, like an aluminum ring. It's a pressed on or clamped on ring. That's if it's got that, that's the what's known as a 223 bar. Part number is 681-84223AB. But yeah, check that one out. It's I like it, man. I mean, I went out looking for a 1320 bar just so I could have a bar on the car. And happy accident, man. And like I say, I was cruising today in Velocito, Mexico. I picture like this: 26 to 2700 RPM, sometimes 2800 RPM in 8th gear. And and with a 309 gear, and you know how to work that one backwards. And just cruising and playing with street and sport mode, and the car felt just like my SRT did. But yeah, check it out. Save a little bit of weight, retain some handling, and it's an off-the-shelf part. So I like it. By the way, 92 degrees today down here and muggy. It started raining just a little bit ago. Him and Dad saying, I'll totally buy some shirts. Would look good on my boys at a show. Absolutely. Like I say, I'm going to try to get some. Man, I got to see if the supplier's still up and running, but I need to see if I can get some in maybe by middle of next month. That'll be the plan anyway. But thank you. I appreciate that. Sovereign saying he's used Vistaprint to make custom hats and shirts. I will check them out for sure. Him and Dad saying P50 ones ran with 150 octane back in the day. Wonder what that would do on a cat. So, well, the P51s did not always run 150. Most of the time it was closer to 100 to 110 avgas, in some cases 120. But the 150 is a RON number. So the problem with 150 is in a scat pack is that you wouldn't be able to take advantage of it because you would be able to basically just arc past MBT. And so the idea would be to run significantly more manifold pressure and utilize the anti-knock properties of the fuel to be able to run more and more and more manifold pressure to the point where you would be able to either exceed the mechanical threshold of the parts of the engine or to be able to reach that MBT number with, say, 25 or 30 pounds of manifold pressure. That's where that would really work out well. But yeah, not to be confused with like now that's dyno or that's gasoline, not to be confused with the coal fuel that the Germans ran, which was, I believe, 130 octane, but had terrible evaporative qualities. But yeah, fuel's pretty interesting. I like the fuel stuff. But yeah, most of the engines back then were, fun fact, by the way, were around 6 to 6.5 to 1 compression ratio. And most of the fuel that they ran, and I've actually done the calculations for mean cylinder pressures and all of that for Allison 1710, the Merlin, Wasp, several of the Wasp variants, Hall Scott motor. I mean, I did a lot of that. Anyway, a lot of engine nerd stuff, but a lot of those engines were running on 92, 100, and 110. And a lot of the lower tier engines, that's why you see that triangle on the side of the airplane. It'd be like B, A, whatever, that designated the octane rating that that engine was designed to run on. And for some of the lower tier planes, like you'd see P40s in some cases, the ones that weren't hot rodded, which by the way, a P40 with a hot rod, with a ground crew that hot rodded them was disgusting to deal with in terms of really hard plane to mess with. But you would have 87 octane, 90 octane that some of those things were trying to run on. So it really limited your manifold pressure. It's one of the reasons why P40s just didn't perform that great, because they were running on shite gasoline. And then the Aussies got a hold of them and basically turned them into hot rods. Will's in saying, good evening, be another banger on Saturday night. I like it. Boom. Say, what would you recommend one to do to get their wide body scats to run in the 10s in the quarter? So to get a scatty in the 10s in the quarter, a fairly mild camshaft, really, really low density altitude, and a really solid tune by somebody who really does speak Mopar. You will run a high 10 with that car. Now, obviously, it takes some weight reduction, get the passenger seat out of the thing, rear seat delete for sure, and a drag pack wheel and tire setup. But you can get them that low. I can tell you that there have been quite a few guys with that setup run in the 10s consistently. You can also hit it with 100 shot of nitrous, which will usually get you there as well. But, you know, caveat emptor on that one, buyer beware when it comes to nitrous, and you're going to definitely have to tune it for the nitrous in that case. But yeah, nowadays running 10s with a scatty is kind of it's not an easy thing to do, but a lot of the cammed cars with some weight reduction are getting down there. So I'm saying, bye, guys, ghetto. So I'm saying, hit that like button. James saying, what up, B? What up, James? Saying, still working at this 392 swap for my Magnum RT. Found out that 2009 to 2012 ECU is going to be my best friend in tuning and keep it VVT. Wish me luck. Good luck. And the reason why it's going to be your best friend is because you don't have to get it unlocked. That's another good one. But you're well on your way, brother. You'll get it done. KDC's asking, what PSI do you recommend running ET Street SS's on the street unprepped? I like 27 PSI. Currently trying to get all my power to the ground without spinning when launching with a 3500 stall. It's a little challenging, I'll say. 27, 25-ish to 27. Depends on the surface that you're on. I would not go below 22. 22 is kind of the magic number at the drag strip for those tires, though. So, but I've run 22 to 24 and 25 to 27 on the street, and have worked really well for me. Hemi saying, great answer. Appreciate you, brother. Absolutely. Yeah. Anytime you want to talk about that stuff, let me know. PT boats, those Allisons were all running, I think those were all running 92 and 100 octane fuel as well. Interesting engines back then. All the hot rod stuff. Gary saying, off to work I go. Later, guys. Thank you for stopping by, Gary. Have a good night at work, brother. Sovereign saying, later, Gary. James saying, cam, nitrous, methanol, etc. Talking about getting a car into the 10s. Stay away from methanol. Don't do methanol. Nitrous, like I said, 100 shot will definitely get you there. Cam, absolutely. And again, you don't have to go to the very bottom of the page. A small ish cam in these cars makes them act like they've got just more displacement. I mean, you pick up power literally everywhere. Some are saying, wonder what kind of fuel the P38 used. Same as the P51s. I think that had dual V12 engines. It had twin Allison V17s. A lot of people were asking why it didn't get Merlins. And one of the reasons why it didn't get Merlins is because it was never designed around that engine. The Allison was actually lighter. People were saying that the Merlins were more powerful. The Allisons would make every bit as much power, if not more, than a Merlin. Again, just ask the Aussies what they were doing with P40s. They would hot rod those things to astronomical power numbers. They'd get them 15, 16, 1700 horsepower and get out there and just rip ass with those things. So, but the P38s all ran on what would normally be considered around 110 octane ish. You'll hear that a lot, that 110 ab gas. Not many of them would be in theaters where they would be running anything less than that, maybe 100 octane at the lowest. But the good thing about the P38 is they had turbos, which in this case would have been good because you wouldn't have had the throttling issues with a turbo issue that you would with strictly like a dual or a triple stage supercharged setup. So, but that's what they would run on. If they get their hands on 130, that would be the best. And I think they would try to stick those engines when they really started to lean on them. You'd see, 60, 65, 70 inches of manifold pressure, which if you divide that by 30, basically you'll get the bar and then multiply bar times 14.7, and that'll get you the number of pounds per square inch of boost. Jim saying, oh, hey, what's up, Jim saying, I will try the swap with the one in our Charger. I guarantee that's the 223 bar. It may be smaller than the Scat Pack. Shouldn't be a problem as I don't mind the ride without the bar. So the 223, that part number that I gave you, the 681, 842, 23 AB, that 223 AB, that bar is like a catch-all bar, man. They put that bar in V6 cars. They put them in wide body 6.4 cars. They put them in SRT 392s. They put them in Scat Packs. And my understanding, and I haven't been told that I'm wrong yet, but that bar is what comes standard in a Charger Hellcat. So the Charger Hellcat does not get the solid bar that the Challenger gets. It actually gets the 223 bar as well. So just kind of a heads up there. And the only car that got that obnoxiously heavy bar was the Challenger Hellcat. And it's called the competition bar, which is weird, but and that's just what it's called. But yeah, and the I don't have it. Do I have it over here? No, that's the one for the bar. This is the actual paperwork for the bar. This is just their UPS stuff. This is the one that was mislabeled. It was actually supposed to be a 1320 bar and ended up being that Scat Pack bar, which is kind of a happy accident. And again, I like it. And the funny thing is that I really did kind of get my sport mode back more than anything else. Before, man, sport, I don't know if it's just my car or what, but the sport would just absolutely, I mean, it was bouncy. It would like beat the hell out of you. And with this new bar, it actually acts just like the SRT did. Sovereign saying P38 is his favorite. Yeah, P38's awesome. The messed up thing about the P38 is that it was expensive. Number one, you could buy 5 Mustangs for what you could buy the 3 P38s for. The other issue was that by the time the P38 would have been receiving updates, there were already aircraft out that were under development that would do equally as well. P47 and the P51 are the first two that come to mind. So the P38 never really got the upgraded Allisons. It wasn't even considered for the Merlins. It never, I say never. There are actually some planes that did get the paddle style props, like what you'd see on the Corsair and the P-47 and the Hellcat. Upgraded superchargers, upgraded turbochargers, things like that. They really didn't happen because they were so they kind of served their purpose, and then the next generation was already kind of coming. But the guys that would hot rod the P-38s, yeah, they would get some stupid numbers out of those things, and they would haul ass, but they're really pretty to look at, no doubt. Roy's saying, don't work too hard, Gary, for sure. Jim's saying it was 86 degrees and 85% humidity today. Yuck. It snowed about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Dude, what is up with weather? So, yeah, we're in that spot now where it's kind of like that all the time. 85% humidity at night. And it's just like it never – the thing about living down here is that it never cools off. It might be 94 degrees during the day, but it's like 86 at night. It just never cools off, and it's always wet. Rift is asking, how safe is a $150 shot of nitrous on a Hellcat with a 268 upper pulley as long as it has a good tune? Well, it's real fun. I mean, 150 shots, I mean, that's kind of the going rate for a lot of guys. I've known guys that have hit them harder than 150 shot on E85, but 150 shot, 268 upper, no lower is pretty good if you're on E85. I would say E85, you'd be all right with that. I'd pull about 3.5-ish degrees, 4 degrees of timing out of it to hit it with that 150 though. And that's on a wet kit with its standalone fuel system. Timmy Dad saying P-38 was amazing, like the space shuttle in 1940, crazy fast cross-section airframe. The funny thing about it is it set a ton of records when it first came out. That aircraft set altitude and speed records just all kinds of different speed records when it first came out. It's the first aircraft to hit 400 miles an hour in a level flight. Some are saying, I understand the Germans hated the P-38. The Germans hated pretty much everything. Well, they didn't hate Spitfires, but let's see. James is asking, some are saying, I understand the Germans hated the P-38. The Germans hated the P-38. They hated the P-51 even more because there was a lot more of them. James is asking, can you explain a little why staying away from methanol injection? Yeah. So methanol injection on an NA car, let's talk about them on an NA car first, because that's, for me, where it makes the least amount of sense. You are not that far away from MBT timing, realistically speaking, if you've got really well sorted out, naturally aspirated Hemi. You'll be sitting at about 18-ish degrees of timing, 17 degrees of timing, depending on your fuel and your area. MBT timing on that car, even on E85, when I've done sweeps on a dyno with E85, you're only talking a couple of degrees of timing, and it doesn't help you make any horsepower. You'll make torque down low, but methanol injection is not going to be any different than running E85 with the car. And you don't pick up really a whole lot of horsepower other than whatever extra oxygen is in the E85 or in the methanol. I don't like it because, number one, I haven't seen it make enough of a difference on any car naturally aspirated to warrant the cost and the putting the thing together. And the other thing is a distribution issue. And unless you're talking about direct port methanol injection, the thing is the intake that you have, the intake manifold that you have is designed to float air. You'll get fluid to float around in it like methanol, but you got to remember It's designed to flow air. It's not like a carbureted intake manifold that knows that it's flowing air and fuel, air and a liquid in suspension. So I have a problem with methanol atomization. If it's not atomized properly, then it's going to have a distribution issue. So in other words, cylinder 6 could be getting a ton of methanol. Cylinder 3 could be getting none. Cylinder 8 could be getting way too much. Cylinder 1 could be getting hardly any at all. You get this weird, and that inconsistency can take place at any RPM at any given time. 4,000 RPM, you have that scenario. 5,000 RPM, you have a different scenario because of the dynamics of how air is flowing inside the plenum. All kinds of goofy stuff can happen with distribution. And I don't like relying on distribution to make power, at least not like that, because it can potentially be inconsistent. So that's the reason why I don't like any type of alcohol type injection in a car, not to mention the fact that it's just incredibly corrosive. So there's that. Now on a Hellcat, the reason why I don't like it on a Hellcat is because people have a tendency to try to tune on that product. And again, we're talking about the distribution issue. Well, when you're trying to tune for the extra octane, the problem that you can have is that you're tuning for the extra octane for the cylinders that are getting the extra octane, and you're over timing for the ones that aren't. And unless you can actually physically measure the air fuel ratio in every cylinder, you're not going to get it right. So those are the reasons why I just don't like that stuff. If it's in a direct port type of a situation, that's one thing. But if you're going to be running direct port, I'd rather see you run direct port nitrous and run a small shot of nitrous than methanol. It would just make more sense, and then just run the thing on race gas no matter what. So hopefully that answers that particular question. But cool, man. We got some fun chats in tonight. We got a little bit of Warbird chat, which I always like yammering on about. Big fan of that stuff. Been studying that stuff for forever. Was big into aviation way before I was big into car stuff, and was fascinated by all engines and all types back then. It was never not entertaining for me. It's always a comfortable place for me to go to. And then while I was working as a docent at the Hiller Aviation Museum, I was the engine specialist. So I got to hang out with pretty much everybody. Got to hang out with some of the old engineers that would come by, the old pilots that would come by. By the way, those guys are fueled and survive on Dunhill cigarettes and coffee. These guys would smoke a pack of cigarettes before 11 o'clock in the morning and will polish off a pot of coffee on their own. And this stuff was diesel fuel. These guys were in their 80s. I don't know how they did it. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, I got to study and play with all of those engines. The Hall Scotts were probably the most fascinating for me at the time. All of those engines were literally like, they didn't have cylinder heads, but they were all Hemi headed engines. And basically it was just a tube, and they're all overhead cam, mechanically driven. And you'd see the rockers coming off, the followers on the cam, and they were pushing in the valves, and everything was just a big tube. And they're all true Hemis, not the guys with 426. That ain't a real Hemi, talking about the Gen 3. And it's like, dude, you don't have a real Hemi. Go look at a Hall Scott engine, which is literally a round tube. Anyway, I can get into this stuff all day. I love this kind of stuff. Sovereign saying the automobile industry played a big hand in making those engines. So they are related in a way. No, they're very much related. As a matter of fact, the Gen 1 Hemi engine, by the way, that'd be your 354, which one's the small displacement up to the 392. Those engines, Chrysler was helping to develop engines for the P47. There was an experimental version of the P47, which was I think it was a V16. And the engineers that developed the Hemi head for that engine, so they took a P47 fuselage, and instead of having a radial, it was a water-cooled the V16 or V12. It's kind of an oddball engine. I know that. Anyway, they use technology from that build to build the very first Gen 1, which turned into the Gen 2, which turned into the Gen 3 Hemi engine. So there is a literal direct line of sight to Warbird technology. More to the point, experimental hot rod Warbird technology with the Dodge and DeSoto brands. So fun fact on that. Someone saying V16, yikes. Yeah, it was kind of a weird thing. They were trying to hot rod the platform itself, and we're trying to get more speed and better performance at high altitude out of it, hence the larger cylinder count, if I remember correctly, or it was just a bigger V12. Either way, it was literally the same guys that were working on that ended up to develop the Hemis. So yeah, your car, if it's got a Hemi in it, has a direct line of sight lineage, engineering, especially to hot rodded World War II technology. James saying, thank you for the explanation, B. So sticking with my plan for direct port nitrous 6.1 intake will definitely fit quite well. Yes, it will, and it'll work a whole lot better going that route too. It'll definitely make a lot more sense for you to go that route, because anything else is you're at the mercy of whatever turbulence is going on inside of that plenum. So just know that coming into the conversation. What's funny is I've never been a big fan of methanol injection that way. But since we're talking about Warbirds, the water meth injection was something that was very common for fighter aircraft and some light bombers to run. But that was because of Germans loved it, by the way. Germans love nitrous oxide for their fighter planes too. A lot of people don't realize that that's where a lot of that technology comes from, is because they were spraying the piss out of the ME-109s from the word go. Anyway, long story short, that those are all direct port water meth injection and direct port nitrous oxide setups. There were a couple that used what was known as an ME system, which is technically methanol, or MW system, methanol water, but it's 50-50 mix that were sprayed before the supercharger. I think they were trying to get some kind of an after cooling or intercooling effect, but for the most part, they were all primarily direct port. So yeah, and that's the reason why they moved away from a lot of the common spray type of a system, is just because of the distribution issues. And you can imagine distribution issues on something like that when you've got what is in essence a throttle body opening. It's a throttle, think of it like an old Chevy truck where they had the throttle body injection. Think of it kind of like that, and then run water methanol sprayers right there in front of that, or just like the nitrous was all direct port, but you would do the water methanol would have gone around that if it was not direct port. Let's see. Oh, Marcus is asking, hey, B, didn't they change the rear end in the newer models? Yes, they did. I'm trying to find out what gears my 2021 RT has in it, but nothing was listed in my paperwork, and I can't find a good answer online. You can call your parts department and give the last 8, just call your any Mopar dealership, give them the last 8 of your VIN, and they can tell you what gear is in it. Probably a 262. If it's an RT, it may or may not have the no slip rear end, but it's probably a 262. Might be a 309, but more than likely it is a 262. would be my guess anyway. Making sure I didn't miss anybody, guys. I don't think I did. Y'all are usually really good about letting me know if I missed you or if it just didn't make the comment or the question just don't sometimes make it up there. Oh, that reminds me. If you guys are sending me a message, like a comment on a video, don't forget, guys, I cannot see links. If you guys send me a link to something, sometimes I'll see it. Most of the time I don't, and that comment can get flagged, and there's nothing I can do about that. So just know that if you send me a link to something, a lot of times I cannot see it, unfortunately. And guys, with that, we are coming up on 2 hours, so I am going to go ahead and wrap it up. But I want to thank each and every one of you guys for hanging out with me. Really do appreciate it. Sorry said, I think mods can send links, and he goes, non-mods can't. That could very well be the case, and I would hope that would be the case. But yeah, non-mods, I can tell you for sure, can't send links. But with that, guys, thank you for that, by the way, Sovereign. Thank y'all very much. Would not do this without you guys. Love each and every one of you. We will catch y'all on the next one. Get out there and do something cool for somebody. And with that, that's a wrap. Y'all have a great one. Adios.